Not sure if you guys have started, but you're muted.
They can't hear the audio.
Oh, there we go.
All right, can you hear us?
Yes, thank you.
All right. My apologies. I'll go ahead and start over. Regional planning efforts are enhanced by recording time donated by attendees, volunteers, and participants. PAG collects data on the time dedicated to meetings and activities to apply for use as matching funds for grants and federal dollars. If you're paid with federal dollars, please let us know. Time spent in preparation for this meeting will be estimated by PAG staff who are knowledgeable on the agenda and meeting materials. At the conclusion of this meeting, the session report will automatically calculate your time spent in the meeting. Time spent working on PAG RTA initiatives, programs, and special projects may also be eligible for consideration for matching funds. The sign-in sheet has gone around, and thank you to those who indicated your time spent on the preparations of this meeting. If anyone else needs to sign it, please do so before you leave.
Great, thank you, Jeanette. We'll move to item 3, approval of the April 19, 2023 meeting summary. Have you all had a chance to review? Are there any comments, questions? All right, hearing none, do we have a motion to approve the meeting summary?
To approve.
Second?
Second.
The motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 All right.
And I will abstain since I was not here. All right, motion passes. Thank you very much. We will move on to item 4, Regional Mobility and Accessibility Plan, RMAP update. Jeanette Duran.
All right, thank you, Chair Credio. Welcome, everybody. Just a few quick updates on the progression of the RMAP. 2 things that we wanted to go over today. One is the Project Explorer, and then the status update on the population projections. We anticipate opening up the Project Explorer in July, and we will be sending out an email with instructions on how to go into the portal and update your projects, add new projects, delete projects, etc. We know that most of you have done that already. You've done that in the past, but for those of you who are new to it, please take a look at those instructions and then reach out to us if you need any assistance. At the July TPC, hopefully we won't get bumped for another meeting, but at the July TPC, our intent is to walk through some of that and answer any questions that you might have. It is set up to import RTA Next projects directly. So that functionality is there. If you would like us to go ahead and move all your RTA Next projects in one big batch, we can do that as well. So that would save you guys time from having to import one project at a time. We can do that in one big swoop. So keep an eye out for that email. It'll probably be coming from Hannah or Zonia, but there'll be instructions, and then of course reach out to any of us if you have questions as we go through that effort. We anticipate keeping that open for a few months. So open it in July, probably keep it open till sometime in September to give you guys time to get in there and get that work done. Do you guys have any questions on that?
Are we just updating the projects that are there, or updating and adding projects to it?
All of the above, all of the above. So it'll be open for additions, deletions, changes, all those items. Yeah. And ideally, when Rick's effort with the RTA Next cost estimates is completed, that can also just be incorporated right in.
Mr. Chair, just in relation to your timeline for putting the plan together, you're mentioning open from July to September. Do you have a kind of a drop dead date in your mind in terms of when you're going to close and there's not going to be any projects slipping in at the 11th hour?
Yeah, I mean, we're hoping for September. Obviously, there's going to have to be some changes and adjustments made once we see where the cards fall, if you will, and then once we solidify that fiscal constraint number, then we're going to obviously have to make adjustments. We anticipate, shutting off the list, if you will, at the end of the year sometime, just to say, okay, this is where we're at. But of course, you know, over the course of the rest of this year, there'll be opportunities to tweak and add.
And then just another follow on, do you have an approach on how you're going to address some of the non-jurisdiction specific projects that we all know are in RMAP? Like, you know, there's regional arterial traffic management and some of those safe routes to school and complete streets that are not necessarily a specific jurisdiction. It's a regional project that we can all point to and say, that's the parent project for doing safe routes to school, Pima County program.
Absolutely, and we anticipate some of those discussions happening at this table.
Perfect. Great.
Other questions, comments?
Chair,
Yeah, go ahead, Jose.
what's the overall schedule for, just remind us, what's the overall schedule for this RMAP
We are ideally shooting for the end of next year for adoption.
in the next year?
Okay,
Are there any comments, questions online? Okay, great. Go ahead, Gina.
all right. The next item I wanted to talk to you guys in relationship to the RMAP is the status of our population projections. So as many of you know, you saw that roll up through the committee chain this year. The Pop Tech Committee did meet twice in April, on April 3rd and April 21st, to solidify their work on the population projections. That went to Management Committee on May 10th and to Regional Council on May 25th, and it was approved. The way that works, most of you guys are probably familiar, but if not, the way that works is we work closely with the Arizona Office of Economic Opportunity, the AOEO, and they produce official projections for the state of Arizona for all the state agencies to use. And then COGS are able to assist AOEO in the preparation of those projections. And it's really a great opportunity for our experts to kind of dive in and look at what's really going on in our community and looking at how we anticipate the population growing and changing. There were two methodologies that the Pop Tech group used, our internal folks used and brought to the Pop Tech. It was decided to use an average of those numbers and everybody was sort of pleased with the outcome. There was one really interesting anomaly that came out of the census that we noticed, and that was that there was what we think was an undercount of the population in South Tucson. But what it looked like was that their population was going to decline pretty drastically. We believe that there was some undercount issue going on there, and we're working with South Tucson to challenge the findings of the census. Basically, the outcome we're hoping for is that their population kind of stays pretty steady over the course of the next so many years, and it doesn't just sort of drop off the wagon. So we're working closely with their staff. I think they technically have to be submitted by the jurisdiction, but since we kind of do all the background data, Hansu and his team are going to be working closely with them to get that submitted. And I believe, Hansu, are you on the line? Did you have anything else you wanted to add?
No, I thank you. And just want to end clear, and actually just add counseling and the management committee, and the actual agenda item moved to a regional council, which was approved by the regional council directly. Other than that, just it's accurate and correct. Thank you.
You, Hansu. Were there any questions on? That's all I have.
All right, thank you very much. We will move on to item 5, Regional Pavement Management Update by Lance Peterson. Lance, take it away.
Good morning, and thank you. I look forward to, I'm glad to speak to you regarding this because I know it's been an issue for a while with a lot of questions on what's going on. So the Regional Pavement Management Task Force is actually, we've had a couple meetings. The most recent was yesterday. And we have a recommendation from the task force to move forward with PAG contracting pavement data collection services and to supplement basically what ADOT is already providing to the region. So that data would be on National Highway Service roadways, federal aid eligible roads, similar to the data that had been collected by the city of Tucson for the last 20+ years. But along with that contract, we would have the ability for local jurisdictions to select from a menu of items that they would like to contract with, such as maybe local roadways, asset management, those type of things. But the recommendation at this point was just to move forward to seek contract data collection services. That looks like either going out for bid. We tried to utilize ADOT's current contract to piggyback on that, but the language in their current contract doesn't allow for that. There's no cooperative language. So we're looking at either going out for bid, or I know some of the local jurisdictions currently are contracted with pavement management data collection services. So there's a potential that we could, if the contract allows, piggyback on that to provide services for the region. That's kind of the gist of what we've come to. We're moving forward, like I said, to contract data, pavement data collection services. So any questions from anyone?
Lance, what's your timeline to have that contract out?
And we're from the meeting yesterday, the consensus seems to be they'd like it sooner than later. So we're going to push to get that out in the next fiscal year.
Next federal fiscal year? Or next July, after July 1st. Okay.
Yeah, after July 1st. Now, if we're coordinating with ADOT's contractor just basically finished their data collection. So they come out, I believe, in March, and they're just about 2 weeks left for what they have to collect. So next year, if we're going to enter, depending on who our contractor is, if it ends up being ADOT's contractor, that data collection may not happen again until the spring.
Thank you, Lance. Other questions, Lance? Paul, and then
No, just a comment. We did talk about like the cycle frequency of collection.
Yeah.
And so I think ADOT is doing annual, if I recall correctly, but I don't think our needs are annual. So we're kind of bouncing around a 3-year cycle collection, doing it every 3 years. So that would undoubtedly have some impacts to the way the funding is programmed in the TIP currently for the annual activities that used to take place through Tucson DTM staff. So that's going to change that whole complexity a little bit.
thank you.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing too about the cycle. 3 years, I think, is maximum that we would for 2 years, but 3 years.
It seems to
acceptable.
suit everyone's
Mhm.
needs, and I think, collectively, all the jurisdictions expressed the desire to collect down to the local roadway level. And so we agreed, let's take a look into the STP, STBG funding, see if there's eligibility there. Likely not, but we just want to, do our due diligence. If those funds can be used to collect data on local roadway, let's do it because it's in the interest of all the member agencies that way.
Right.
Otherwise, we'll look at what the local fund contribution needs to look like from the jurisdictional side.
Right. Anything else to add, Jose?
No, we are looking forward to getting this program underway because we haven't received data since 2018 in our major roadway. City of Tucson, I think they stopped 2018, 2019. So we really are looking forward to getting this thing moving forward so we collect some of that data in our tiers and collectors.
Yeah, and like I said, I've already started. I've been piecing together a scope, so we're getting pretty close to move forward. So, but I do know there's some local jurisdictions that I know Pima County, you guys have contracted with the contractor. I don't know if that contract allows for cooperative language or.
We used another agency's contract that had the cooperative language. I can't remember which agency right now, but we can get you that info.
What's your frequency on that one? Is it every 2 years or 3 years?
We've been aiming for every 3 to 5 years. So we did ours in 2019 and then again at the tail end of last year. So it was a 3-year
Every
cycle.
3 year cycle?
That was 100% of our roadways and at a cost that's less than what this region programs annually for this effort.
That includes local roads too?
So 1,900 miles of roadway.
And Mr. Chair, I don't want to miss the opportunity. ADOT staff has been great. Both Robert Bush and Jeremy have been really helpful in our discussions and deliberations
Thank you.
Among
I'll let them know.
task force, so they've been just a wealth of knowledge.
So I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
When does ADOT's current contract end?
I believe it's 2027,
Okay.
the current one.
All right. So
Because we were looking
That
at,
was-
if we collected data in 2024 and we did it on a 3-year cycle, potentially we could be in ADOT's
contract.
new contract, which Robert kind of alluded to may be problematic with a new contractor if the current one doesn't get the next contract. So yeah.
Okay. And you're just looking at doing federal routes?
From the PAG standpoint, yeah.
Okay, so then you guys are all interested in doing local streets, which are not federal routes. So, okay, thank you.
So is Lance the idea that the contract would be set up such that we are able to add on the local streets as kind of because we would be paying for it, but an extra component to that contract that allows us to add on as necessary? Is that the
Yes,
idea?
definitely a kind of a menu item for that asset, or, data or asset management program. And they also do a lot of, they have software for pavement scheduling and such that they would offer as well.
I have a question, Mr. Chair. So I heard Jose say they hadn't gotten info for 4 years-ish. And I don't think that the city did anything this last fiscal year. So, and it sounds like what we will be doing is less cost-wise than it has been. So are we gonna continue to program $450,000 annually for this effort? Or will there be some reevaluation of how that's funded?
And actually on the funding part, I am not sure what that's going to look like going forward.
Yeah, we haven't actually came up with a scope of work yet. I guess once we come up with a scope of work and work with a vendor, then we'll know whether 450,000, like you said, is programmed every year, STP funds. I think 20,000 for local funds as well. I don't know where they got the 20,000. Must be the matching funds as well. But yeah, until we actually have a vendor on board in the scope of work, this is what it's going to cost for the arterials and collectors or the federal aid. Then we'll know whether it's enough. We might have to get more money.
Do we know?
It's like everything else, everything's going up.
Do we know, if we weren't spending that entire 450 these past few years, what has happened to that funding since it's programmed in the tip specifically for pavement maintenance? Or pavement management?
It's part of the overall work program. Is my
Yeah, but it's
understanding.
this
Yeah.
one is unique because it's in the tip with an explicit number.
Correct.
So I'm just curious if we've been spending that amount, and if not, where that funding has not.
So it's not in the work program? It's in
It
the
is,
tip?
it's
It
in
is
both,
part of the overall.
but some of the work program, isn't in the tip. This one is in both places.
That money was actually used, if I recall correctly, to pay for the van operation and maintenance and the staff in the city of Tucson. But that went away,
Right.
but was that like a year, 2 years ago or something like that?
We just, we got rid of the van at the end of calendar year 2022.
2022, just last year. I'm sure they were doing some services, but we have not received them.
I'm excited by the new service model.
Just
Well,
for
we are-
reference, ADOT staff shared that I think they're collecting just shy of 20,000 linear miles.
Okay.
For just under $1 million. So I think there's going to be more funds than needed to collect on a 3-year cycle for the lower amount of linear miles that we'll need to collect throughout our network.
But we-
What the details actually look like, we'll have to figure that out.
And it's gonna depend on the scope of work too.
Yeah, for sure.
And what are you asking the contractor to do? And then they'll tell you a price and then we'll know whether 450 is sufficient to cover it.
Other questions, comments? Any online, Sonia?
What are we,
Go ahead,
what are
Rod.
we- is this an action item?
This is information only. So it's not an action item, and I'll close the conversation by just saying, I do appreciate you coming, Lance, and sharing with us. Our folks that participated on the working group, we're very pleased by the discussions that were occurring. I think this is the right regional approach take with pavement management, and I'm excited for the future collaboration amongst the regions to pursue this model. So thank you very much, Lance.
Thank you.
All right. Hearing nothing else, let's move on to item 6, regional transportation revenues. David Zinda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let's see, it's just past 9:20, so I guess the last 2 items, I might maybe get you out in record time. We'll see. Yes, so in your packet, as you can see in the actual item memo, we have our RTA TBT revenue budget performance. That goes through May. Those are lagged 2 months. And as of May, it looks like we had exceeded or just about exceeded, sorry. Yeah, 2023 adopted budget was 107 million. We're at 108, and we haven't even gotten that final month. I think, if I recall, since, these packets get prepared well in advance before they actually end up on your desk, we do have a June number. I don't remember what that is, but the total is around 118-ish. So it looks like those are coming in strong for this fiscal year 2023. Going to the standard fare of HERF, we can see in table 1 of the regional transportation revenues report that we've received just shy of 150 million as of April 2023. Little over 2.5% higher compared to last year, almost 12% higher on the 5-year average. And so that includes, of course, your direct HERF as well as HERF 12626. Table 3 in the HERF 126 report, as of April, we had collected about 23.6 million. That is going to be about 4% higher over what would be implied by the ADOT projection if it were equally divided over 12 months, and slowly approaching that total projection of 27 million. I wouldn't be surprised to match that given our strong revenues for this past year. Compared to the prior year, we're up about 6%, just under almost 7%. Table 4, HERF 26, much of the same story as 12.6. We seem to be having some strong revenues compared to what had been projected and what we actually received last year at 11 and almost 14% respectively. Table 5, you can see our HERF 12.6 balances continue to increase a bit. We're at 64 million. That's a 56 year-over-year gain, 56% that is. Table 6, gasoline sales, and figure 2 kind of show the plot of those sales as a percentage of the state sales in Pima County. Nothing unusual there. We typically have around 13%. Some months are higher, some are lower. What happened in March, I don't know. So a lot of gas was purchased, but there were no obvious errors, at least in the report that I could see, that were later corrected. So we'll take what we can get there. Other than that, I don't think I have much else to report unless you have any questions.
Great. Thank you, David. Any questions for David? Catherine?
I just want to, I might sound like a broken record, but go back to that HERF 12.6 balance. We're now up to 64.4 million. I really think we as a committee need to look at what we need to do to start breaking some of this funding loose. I mean, if I'm looking at the month by month, it just grows every month with the exception of between August 22 and September 22. Other than that, it's just like adding. So I don't know what we need to do to make this 12.6 get spent, but this is a significant amount of money that's not helping improve roads right now.
Is there a response from PEG staff?
If I may,
Go ahead,
Mr.
Jamie.
Chair, members of the committee, we did hear your question and comment about that at the April TPC meeting, and we did send out a brief memo on this item where we had indicated how much was programmed in fiscal year 23 in the tip of HERF 12.6, which is 56,465,000. And as of early May, we had only 3,365,269 had been expended. Of course, we do have some HERF reimbursement request packets under review, but we did respond to that back in May via memo, and we did encourage members to look at the tip to see where HERF dollars were programmed and follow up with the member agency with specific questions.
Thank you, Jamie. Captain, do you have another question?
I just think we need to review what our process is. I don't know. We don't have a lot of 12-6 programs right now. So I'm just looking at the money growing, and I know from managing a department, that would be an unacceptable spend rate for our capital program. And so I'm trying to understand as a region how we can get this to something that seems a little bit more expected.
Sure. Are the projects not moving? Is that what the issue is? I mean, it sounds like the money's tied into the project, but the project is not moving along, but what's going on there?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Rodriguez, that's a great question. I think that's what we're seeing is just, I think there was a lot of programming that was done of the HERF, and of course the HERF rolls over. So there's some flexibility. And of course, if projects are not really in a position ready to draw down the funds, then it can simply roll over. And I think that's just really what's happening. There's some major projects that are underway, but have not yet started to expend HERF dollars. My understanding. Others can feel free to chime in.
Other questions, comments?
That's a lot of money. Just sitting there. And I know many years back, there was a concern about sweeping of funds when, back in 2007, 2008. When the state was looking for funds, like, and that was a big concern at that time. Like, well, if we don't move this money, they might look at, well, since you don't need it, we'll just sweep some of that funds over here. And here we are, $64 million. That's a lot.
Is it in an interest-bearing account?
I believe ADOT does.
Yeah, I
put it in
think it is, but it's ADOT.
Other questions, comments? David? Any online, Sonia? All right, hearing none, let's move to item 7, legislative update. David Zinda. David.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's still a legislature in session. I think looks like it did end last week or a week before that without a motion to adjourn. So I guess the idea is the legislature will remain open at least until July 31st to allow the Senate to work on gubernatorial nominations. And it's expected that the legislature will close the session when it returns without passing any additional legislation, it sounds like. So things are moving slowly. Kind of the big item of note, of course, is going to be that Maricopa transportation excise tax. I think that is still undergoing negotiations. As of today, there have been 164 days of the legislature, so certainly a lot there. Some 1,600, almost 1,700 bills introduced, 346 which passed, so a small fraction, only 202 signed into law, 143 vetoed. We did skip a month in TPC meetings, so maybe this is old news, but as you know, a budget was passed for fiscal year 2024, amounting to around 17.8 billion, thanks to strong revenues above and beyond what was needed to maintain state operations. Of course, the state fiscal year runs from July 1st until June 30th. It looks like that this might be the last year, at least from what I have heard, that we have very strong state revenues and have such a large budget. So expect to see that number perhaps decline a little bit in subsequent years. The budget outlines a spending plan for fiscal year 2024 that includes many one-time spending and revenue changes because it was so strong. Some of the more notable adjustments include additional one-time funding for education, a reallocation of results-based funding for ongoing K through 12 funding, an individual income tax rebate, and capital transportation infrastructure investments, and a significant number of smaller one-time appropriations. Of that 17.8 billion, about 653.5 million relate to transportation projects. The capital outlays bill, Senate Bill 17-2022, which was signed into law, shows some of the projects of interest to our area that received funding for these kind of one-time appropriations. 89 million for the I-10 widening from Casa Grande to Chandler. In Marana, I-10 Cortara Road traffic interchange got 10 million, I believe, for design. Drexel Road Bridge improvements received 15 million. There is 3.5 million slated for a Phoenix to Tucson passenger rail study. And I'm guessing in Oro Valley, State Route 77 pavement rehabilitation at 3.2 million, which was an adjustment from the appropriation last year. The legislature, that's old news, I'm going to skip over that. Turning to some bills that we have been watching, 1312 was this bill that would have prohibited any tracking of vehicle miles traveled or any associated tax with that. That did appear to pass on the House Committee of the Whole. So that would mean it would progress to go to a third vote. And if the House passes it, then it could be transmitted to the governor at that point. However, with the strangeness of the legislature, I don't know if we'll see much more action or not on that. 1313 would have prohibited a general plan from including policies or projects that reduce overall system capacity for motor vehicle traffic, including in the general plan. This one did fail, so that one is dead. 1340 would prohibit a county board of supervisors from granting an application to construct a toll road if the proposed toll road will be converted from a publicly funded or maintained street or highway. This one was signed into law. 1697 would have prohibited ADOT from accepting federal money to pay for the construction, maintenance, or expansion of a highway or a state route if that acceptance of federal money was conditioned on the design and construction of a bicycle path or pedestrian walkway. That one also failed. Senate Concurrent Resolution 1018 is another incarnation of this prohibition against vehicle miles traveled tax, BMT tax, except it would put it on the 2024 general election ballot. So subject to voter approval, it would constitutionally prohibit the imposition of a tax or fee based on VMT or any rule or law that monitors or limits a person's VMT. This did pass out of the Senate and passed out of the House committees, hasn't gone to the full House for consideration yet, but that would essentially bypass the governor, of course. And I think that's all I have, unless you have any questions.
Any questions for David? Tony, any questions online? All right, thank you very much, David. Item 8, future agenda items. Any requested future agenda items? All right, hearing none, we will go to item 9, adjournment. Have a motion to adjourn.
Adjourn.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
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 Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Yes.